Okay, before you start your painting, there's a couple things that you're going to want to do. The first thing is to get out some tape. It can be masking tape. This I had some blue tape left from when we were painting the house, and I have already ripped off a piece of it. Now I'm going to show you a trick. One of the tricks that you can do for tape is you can actually take it and you can rub it on your clothing. And I know that sounds wacky, but if you rub the tape on your clothing, then it's less likely when you take it off the paper to pull up some of the paper and, to rip the paper. So, and you don't want your paper to rip. Now the purpose of putting the tape down around the edges of your design is so that you'll have a nice, clean, crisp, clear, straight edge. So here you go, just doing my thing, rubbing my tape on my outfit there, and putting it down on the paper. Now some of the paper may still peel off a little bit when you take it up. Now as I'm putting my tape down, I'm just making sure that the straight edge is even with the straight line that I drew. Okay, before you get started, you are going to need to go through and erase all your grid lines. Now, one of the type of eraser I like to use is a kneaded eraser. I like the kneaded eraser because it doesn't leave those little erasure crumbs that some of the other erasers leave. So you're going to want to go through, erase all your lines. You can probably leave the lines where the black spaces are. And, if you forget to do it now, you can always do it when you're done erasing the lines on the white. So as I'm painting and as I'm working on this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my image on my phone. Now, if you have a setup that's big enough and you're able to look at your image on a computer screen on your table, that would be really, really good. Now, I don't have quite that much room here. The other things you're going to need when you paint are you always need a little container full of water. You'll probably notice I say water a little differently than you. I am originally from Philadelphia, so I have a bit of an accent. You're going to have some paper towels available. You may want to go around the edges with a micron marker. You also might need a pencil to fix up any other edges that you're going to work on. So as I'm looking at this area in here, I just want to spend some time kind of perfecting that edge. That's going to come out there, and maybe it's a little bit more wobbly in here, and really looking at that beautiful edge that might come in there a little bit more. Right here, I'm seeing this come down, maybe a little bit further, curving up and around, down. Maybe I'll take that in here a little bit, keeping my eye on like the negative space. So I continue to, perfect my drawing as I go. Okay, so then I'm going to clean it up just a little bit. Now you are going to be painting the negative space. So what that means is you're not going to paint the leaves. You're going to paint the space around the leaves. Now, when I took my photo, I shot up into the sky, so you can see that, it's pretty easy for me to tell what's the positive space, what's the negative space, because in my photo the negative space is blue. But it could be that in your photo the negative space might be just the background. Now there's some type of brushes that came with your kit, and since I did not purchase a kit, I'll show you the different types of brushes that are similar to what you have, but I know you have nice new brushes. Alright, the first type of brush that you have, and all of these are flats, okay? So a flat brush has a flat ferrule. This metal piece is called a ferrule. So that has a flat ferrule. Now, if it's a flat brush, the bristles, these are called the bristles, will be a little bit longer. And if it's called a bright, the bristles will be shorter. That's a bright right there. See? See, it says bright. Yeah. Okay. Now, the short handle brushes I believe that's what you received in your kit from Blick. Short-handled brushes are usually used with watercolor or any kind of painting that you do maybe on a flat surface because you're just painting like this. Now if you're an easel painter, you're going to use a long-handled brush because you use your easel painter. You do this, you hold your brush at the end, and so you can get some movement into your brush strokes. It's really a lot of fun. That's why these handles are so long. That's for easel painters. So those are really for oil painters or for acrylic painters. Okay, other kind of brushes. These have a round ferrule. Okay, and so pretty easy to remember. They're called round brushes. I believe you have one that's super skinny and kind of long and one that's kind of a medium-sized round. Now you also have a brush that's a flat brush that it's cut at an angle. Those are especially good for getting into corners, and I think that you're going to really enjoy using that. Anyway, those are my selection of brushes right there, and I'll show you how to use them. Okay, so starting right now, I always like to put my brush in the water first. I don't like to use a dry brush. And then when I'm taking my paint, what I want to do is load up my brush with enough paint, but not too much. Okay, now if I want to paint a good steady line, I'm going to rest my side of my hand right on the table. And as I'm resting my hand on the table, that gives me a really, really nice sense of stability. Now, let me show you what you're trying to avoid. See that edge right there? See how it's kind of rough? That's what you're trying to avoid. You want to keep a nice, good, clear edge. Now, I chose a round brush because I'm curving around, I'm painting a round area. So in here, that's a nice thing with the round brush. Anytime you have like a curve, and you need to paint that curve, your round brush will just kind of curve around like there. Now when you're painting with a brush, if you've never painted before, this type of painting for this class is kind of different because we're just trying to keep everything nice and flat. Okay. Now with your black paint, sometimes with the paint that's the student grade paints, sometimes you might have to put another coat on if it looks a little bit transparent. So this is curving around like that. And again, in order to get some stability, because I want a nice clear edge, I'm keeping my this part of my hand, right there, that, the muscle that's attached to my pinky finger, I'm keeping that, flat on the table there. So yeah, when you're painting with brushes, you want to pull the paint. You don't want to push the paint. Okay, so that line, I'm trying to, kind of on purpose, get it a little bit wobbly. And I can see that I went a little bit off the shape, but it is a leaf, so doesn't matter that much. We're just trying to get it pretty close. Okay, now, one thing you need to know about acrylic paint, don't ever let it sit on your brush for an extended period of time. Okay? If you do that, you're going to ruin your brushes. Because what happens is acrylic paint, when it dries, it turns into plastic. Alright, so flat brush, you can use a flat brush for some of these curvilinear forms, but I think that you're going to really find the flat brush to be much more handy when you're painting straight edges. So you can kind of use a flat brush on its side like that to curve around the edges. And of course for big areas you're going to want to use a flat brush. So you can see in here, to get that curve with a flat brush, I'm going to curve around like that, and I can get a pretty good clear curve. And then I'm really focusing on that edge. Now, I am well aware that I already drew this out, but it really helps to have your photo handy while you're painting, because then you're going to work on perfecting your drawing as you go. Now, I can see that my paint got a little bit out of the line there, but that's not too bad. Okay, that kind of stuff's going to happen. All right, this is where I wanted to kind of show you how to take the paint and pull it across to get it nice and flat and smooth in the larger areas. So you want to paint you're going to paint the edges first. Okay, that's the most efficient way to work. Paint the edges first and then take the paint and just pull it across. And acrylic dries pretty fast, so as you're working you don't have that much time before it starts drying. All right, so now other things to know. Okay, so there's other ways you can go about working on edges besides what I showed you. But as I'm working up here, I do think I'm just going to finish this edge, show you how to do that. So in here, I'm just taking that round brush, because I really do like the round brushes for the edges, especially with working with these organic forms, that have irregular edges. And so this edge, I'm really looking at my photo, it kind of comes up a little bit there, and then it comes back down. All right, and then I'm just going to take this paint here and then kind of just pull it together. All right, so what if you haven't developed this kind of eye-hand coordination yet? Remember, part of the growth mindset is to understand that through, practice and clear instruction helps too. You can really learn a lot of new skills. Now, here's another thing you can do. You should have some black markers available. And I am going to go into this area here, and I'm going to work on this area. And this is just another way that you can do your edges. So I'm going to just go ahead and draw that edge, and maybe I come in here a little bit. I am using the 08 micron, which is the largest one that you received. So this is coming in here. So if you're working on leaves that have like really intricate, like kind of zigzag edges, or you're working on, maybe you have some flowers, and and if you need a high amount of detail around the edges, I would totally work with the marker first. Okay, so I'm going to use my flat brush right in here. And I'm going to do that because I want to paint around the edges here. Now I'm just kind of sneaking in there and pulling that paint around like that. Sometimes with a flat brush, and you'll see me, I'm actually moving around this desk. Sometimes you can get a nice clear edge with a flat brush using it on its side. All right, now here I've got to be a little more careful. When you have a corner, look how nicely that flat brush works for that corner. Okay, just kind of make it go in there. Then here, I'm going to take that brush, go between these two little shapes here, and this one, I'm just going to carefully come in there, and then this will curve around like that. There we go. And then I'm going to finish painting the shape. So when you do have the tape around the edge, the nice thing about it is, you see how I just went right over the edge with my paint? So then when I take the tape off later, it'll give me a nice good clear edge. Now, as I started working on this, apparently I had a little bit too much water on my brush, and so I'm getting kind of a transparent look. And you don't want that. You want your paint to look nice and flat. And anyway, painting like this, painting these designs can be really, really relaxing. Just make sure you have enough time. Give yourself enough time to get this assignment finished. And I'm going to, as you can see, I'm giving that a second coat. And I'm giving it a second coat actually before it dries. As the acrylic paint starts drying, it will form a skin. So if you try to give it a second coat and the skin on the top is starting to form, but it isn't totally dry yet, what could happen is that top skin could peel off. I don't know, it's kind of like sometimes you might get skin on top of some foods like pudding or custard or something like that, you know, where it's kind of hard on the top and then underneath, yeah, and then underneath it's like kind of soft and gooey. Same thing happens with the acrylic paint. So if you do need to give sections of your painting another coat, you should either wait till it's totally dry or give it another coat kind of right before it starts drying. All right, there I went in a little bit. Now there is a way that you can clean up those edges later with a X-Acto knife, or you could use just a little touch of white out if you want. That would be okay. But I think at this point, I think you've got a pretty good idea about how to go about painting your negative space branches. So since I mentioned it, I did want to show you how you can clean up edges after your paint's dry. You gotta be patient, wait till your paint's dry. But if you need to clean up some edges, and if you have an X-Acto knife at home, you can kind of, it's almost like you're shaving the paper. Now you don't want to use your knife to cut through the paper, but then I just kind of blow the extra edges away. But you can clean up your edges like that. Here I got a little bit of the paint out there and a little brush stroke. Now, you know, sometimes those little imperfections make the painting interesting, but you know, in this class we're really going to get some good clean lines. Then afterwards, after your paint's all dry, then you can really go back with an eraser. And you know, before you photograph your work, you want to really clean up those edges. Make sure you erase the grid line as well as you can, and erase all the edges around your shapes. Now here, where I worked on fixing that edge, I can see that some of my paint looks a little bit transparent still. So I'm just going to go back in there and just touch it up a little bit. I'm going to just pull this in here. But remember, when you're touching up, I always tell myself this, when you're touching something up, or we sometimes call it fine tuning, it's important that you don't make it worse. So to keep a nice steady hand, and there it was a little bit transparent, so I wanted to go over that again. Just kind of pull the paint all together. And that pretty much wraps it up. I think I've shown you all my tricks. Okay. Anyway, enjoy painting your negative space branch design.